So hi everybody, thanks for joining today. We really appreciate it. We're glad to see you at our 5 tips for field ticketing implementation success webcast. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Matt Pfohl. He'll get everybody introduced and begin.
Thanks so much. So today, as for those who attended our panels before, this is more of kind of panel discussion, open discussion. We like to bring multiple perspectives to what's happening in the industry, specifically in this case, field ticketing, so that you get perspective from us as a system integrator, as well as Peter Purcell, who's more of a management consulting process improvement for the industry. And so I'm Matt Pfohl, Executive Vice President of Sopris. Peter, you want to make a quick intro of yourself?
Yeah, Peter Purcell, co-founder, CEO of Trenegy.
Excellent. Well, Bill, let's get started. So today we'll just take a quick look at really kind of some of the key factors that are affecting how we think about field ticketing solutions. And really the bulk of what we're going to focus in on today is not technology so much, but really practice and proper processes to successfully deploy and ultimately change a culture to really embrace automated field ticketing. So when we look at from both sides of us from more of a technology side of thing and Peter from more of a process improvement side of thing, kind of the 4 big shifts and pillars that we're seeing today is first and foremost is the broader ecosystem. So when we look at the total value chain between ourselves, our employees, our customers, and our partners, and now even devices, the need for interoperability has gone through the roof. So instead of just, hey, we can go get this off the shelf field ticketing system, and we're going to automate the process of getting manual tickets, in from the field so that we can get them billed. There's much more of a need for this interoperability across the ecosystem to improve speed, to improve data quality, and so on. Also, when you look at from the service side of thing and what's happened in the industry, what used to be simple inspections or drill services have gotten into much more complicated type of services that we're providing. As a result, the need for automation, the need for reliance on technology becomes that much more important. Peter, anything else you want to hit on that topic?
Well, yeah, and as we move forward through that, customers, E&P companies, operators, et cetera, are really forcing folks onto platforms. They want integrated, integrated solutions, integrated information, field ticketing, all the way through to billing, all in one, ecosystem across all their services. That way that they have clear visibility into what's being done and what needs to be paid for.
So what's interesting when you look at these last 2 elements, when we think of technology disruption, sometimes we think about it in the context of specifically what we're our part of the value chain. But what's happening is that you're seeing technology disruption across the value chain. And so as a result, it's forcing us to re-look at how we're delivering our services. And we all know that time this is one of the most important things is turnaround time in this industry, both for us as it relates to the collection side as well as delivering our services. What's happening with the disruption of technologies is because it's being applied across the value chain, and when you look at it from a digital world and this connected world, it's creating this even higher pace, higher fast expectation. So what we used to do in a manual type of, from when you look at a work demand or an order all the way through to delivery, it's almost outpaced our ability to supply that anymore in any manual fashion. And the final element, when you look at kind of new entries to the market, we used to look at it, from delivering field services and oil and gas services, really just we're experts at a particular service and just go out and deliver the work, and then we'll figure out how to bill for it later, and we'll figure out how to ensure that we're profitable and so on. And where today new entries into the market are actually putting technology at the forefront. So when they're entering this space, they're looking at it from, we need a platform day one in order to be effective in this space. So it's a much different way of thinking of how the industry has kind of looked at technology.
Yeah.
So Peter, I'm going to hand this back to you.
Sure. Sure. So, Trenegy is a consulting firm. We were formed 9 years ago, and our primary focus is to provide consulting services to oilfield services companies. Energy industry as a whole, but oilfield services, really is kind of a specialization. We've helped a number of companies through field ticketing exercises, everything from standardizing processes to trying to get technology in to, fixing implementations that may not have gone well and that kind of thing. So based on our experience, we've been doing this for probably about, my business partner and me over 30 years, but as Trenegy for the last 10. These are the big 4 things as to why field ticketing system implementations can fail. It's inconsistent processes and templates. As companies have grown through acquisition, which is how most everybody grows, all the new companies that come online buy 3 wireline companies, and all 3 claim they do business very differently, and so they need their ticketing systems to be very different. And then, there's always the argument of, hey, the basin I'm in and the customers I have ask for things differently. So trying to tackle that late in the process or trying to tackle that as part of implementation, oftentimes the resistance is very high. So we as we go through this, we'll show you how you overcome that. Pricing, irregular pricing, every basin has, we understand landed costs, and we understand that, there's certain costs that will be different from basin to basin. But in general, customers are asking for more consistent pricing. But when you don't have price lists and stuff, it's pretty hard. Poor communication. Everybody's running fast. Even through, the downturn, everybody was running fast and just trying to keep their heads above water and staying ahead of competition. So you don't have a whole lot of time to go out and provide communication around field ticketing and things like that. And then the last is training. The turnover in the field, as everybody knows, is pretty high. You can have whole crews or leave you for $1 an hour. And so the minute they come up and understand what's going on, they're gone. So these big 4 things typically are the root of most challenges and most reasons why field ticketing systems fail.
Awesome.
So if we go to
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. So if we go to the next slide, so what happens? Why is a good field ticketing implementation important? I think as Matt said at the beginning, as we kind of hopefully we communicated, E&P companies, production, exploitation, exploration, everybody, right? What they want is good visibility into what you're doing for them, at what price, what crews, what EH&S, reports you need to have, that kind of thing. So if you have a good field ticketing system, you can reduce your DSO. Tickets are more accurate. Company man signs them, whether it's electronically or if you have to, on a pad or something like that. Once that's signed, in general, it makes it much easier for you to get paid. Your accuracy of billing goes through the roof. If you have consistent price lists and you have kind of consistent ticketing, the chances of contract leakage, doing work that's not captured or misbilling for work goes down. Dual entry goes down. If you have paperwork, pretty much everybody on the phone's probably gone out and done lac meter readings on paper, throw it on the dashboard, and maybe about 4 days later, it'll get entered into the system. Well, field tickets are the same way. We've worked with even companies that do as simple as, saltwater hauling. If you fill out the paper and it just sits on the dash, or it even just, sits on the floorboard on the passenger side, it takes a while for that to get into the system. That creates issues, and it's dual entry essentially. And when you put all this together, you shorten the time it takes to close the books.
Peter, I want to add one other thing that we're seeing quite a bit, and that is really the need for analytics. So it's not just about delivering the work and proving, that you did the work and the quality of the work, but really what were the learnings. And so we're seeing much more of a collaboration desire from the customer side as it relates to the work that we're performing and analytics that can be captured as it relates to the learning, kind of feeding back to well economics, if you look at it that way. So it's not just about providing the service anymore, but when you look at how do we kind of differentiate amongst the competition, if we can bring that up to a layer of, from an analytical perspective, to look at kind of performance of particular elements of the services that we're providing, we're seeing an incredible appetite for customers wanting that from their service providers. Okay, Bill?
Yep, exactly. Okay, Bill. So how can you prepare for a successful field ticketing implementation? And based on our experience, there's 5 things that you can do. It may delay the software implementation by a little bit, but these are steps that are pretty critical. The clients that have gone through these processes with us have always had a successful implementation. So the first one, if we go to the next slide, is to develop process and journey maps for key processes. Okay, so everybody knows what a process map is. You're mapping out processes and you're documenting how things should be done in a future state. Journey maps are a little different. Basically, and you guys can go. Actually, you can go to our website. We have a whole series of articles on this, but they're not new or anything like that. People have been doing journey mapping for application development and platform development for years. And since you are moving to a platform environment, totally integrated with your client, it's time to do journey maps. And really what they do is they visualize the user experience. But the bottom line is the reason why you need to do process maps is if you can get everybody in the room by service line, what you'll find is everybody says they do things differently, but if you start mapping out the processes, all of a sudden you're going to find out, they don't do things so differently. And this is pretty key to do first because it starts a mind change, right? It starts people thinking a little differently about, hey, maybe, my wireline business here in Oklahoma isn't so different as your wireline business in Midland. And, you need to start changing people's minds so that they can start realizing standardization is not a bad word. Journey maps are pretty critical because what they do is they will tell you where your bottlenecks are. For example, in the past, everybody thought putting technology in a crew chief's hand or putting technology in a rouseabout's hand, they're not going to be able to do it. But you go to any McDonald's or any, restaurant in Midland or, pick a city that's in a basin, and you're going to see the iPhone prayer, or I call it the iPhone prayer, the smartphone prayer, right? Yeah, I do own Apple stock, so I guess I have to push the iPhone. But it's the smartphone prayer. Everybody is very technology savvy. So if you start drawing out journey maps and you kind of visualize the user experience and you do the journey map on the side of the process map, you will see that where people think, technology is the issue, it's not. It really is more the process, and it really is more about understanding how people think and how they're going to feel. Yeah, I know we have to worry about feelings, but how people feel, as new technology is rolled out. So, if you can do this, what you'll find is the process maps will help get people on board for, hey, maybe we're not quite so different. And then the journey maps allow you to make sure that you put technology in folks' hands really at the right time, and you clearly understand the impact of what these changes are going to be on folks. So if you can do that, that starts the mindset to change. Matt, before we move on, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I would. I think it's I would 100% agree that, you know, in the perfect case, if you can do this work up front, it's going to have a much better impact as it relates to the change management side, as well as to Peter's point, you know, typically what we're trying to do with technology is create standardization. The challenge is to the point made earlier, is that everybody thinks that their process is better than the next guy. And so, and I think sometimes customers come to us looking at technology as the silver bullet that, hey, our processes are so bad, let's just map to the application. And, you know, there's really no silver bullet out there. And at the end of the day, you're going to create more of a negative impact in the culture side of things and having people work outside the system versus bringing them into a journey mapping type of session, making them feel that their input is important, making them realize that, hey, we have good ideas collectively, you know, amongst, as we call, tribes, and we're more alike as tribes than we are different. Ultimately, it will provide a much more embracing when we get to actual in hand of the technology. The other thing I will say is kind of the happy medium. So it's not, hey, we're going to do a deep dive on process and really kind of redefine, but, you know, do our firms like ourselves and Peter's firm, you know, have existing best practice processes, and maybe that's the benchmark we just move towards. So there's multiple ways to address this, and yes, we can do it both ways. In the case where, hey, we've got terrible processes and just tell us what is best practice, we can absolutely help bring that to the table and then look at, you know, what will that work for us, which kind of helps compress that cycle.
Yeah. So the next thing that we suggest is, you know, once you've done the process and the journey maps, and, you know, to Matt's point, you have folks starting to think a little bit like, hey, you know, maybe we're not quite so different. What we suggest is you actually pilot manual standardized ticket forms. Okay. So what this does is this gives you a chance, you know, you have the group of people together, by, you know, and typically it's by service line. So why can't all the wireline, you know, tickets be the same? Why can't all the, you know, well, rat pulling is kind of easy, but, you know, why can't all my water transfer tickets look the same? Why can't all my, you know, rental tickets actually look the same? And so what we like to do is, as everybody's in the room, as we start to literally lay out on a whiteboard, you know, we take existing tickets, we map, you know, the data, what kind of information you're capturing, and we try to do consistent layouts by service line. And we call it a pilot on purpose, because what happens is, again, from just what people hear is, oh, we're sort of testing this. And we've helped a number of companies kind of go through this process, and it actually works. It works very well, because once you get standardized tickets, the technology side becomes a little bit easier. I know the minute I say that, Matt cringes, but for us, when we, you know, our biggest issue when we're helping manage field ticketing implementation is, man, Midland Wireline has to have a different ticket than, you know, the stuff that's in Marcellus than the stuff that's in Bakken or even Oklahoma, right? So if you can standardize these things and start with paper, right? Start with Excel. And once you can get the same service line, you know, the same guys taking a look at tickets the same way, that's a huge step forward, and probably one of the biggest step forwards that you can make. And again, just mentally, everybody's thinking, okay, this is a pilot, so we're still listening, and we're listening for better ideas. And so once you standardize your tickets by service, it really makes everything else easier as you move forward. This is probably one of the biggest chinks in the dam of, hey, I don't want to change this. If you can break through this, everything else really becomes a little bit easier.
You're actually putting a smile on my face, Peter. It brings me back to my old days of construction software, and geotechnical forms and inspections. We had the same learnings coming from the technology side that ultimately, creating the standard forms first ultimately helps both with the cultural impact as well as when we move to the automated side. It's a very similar lift and shift. I think the other thing too that we see, going back to a point you made earlier, both on the form side as well, or the tickets themselves, or the invoice side, and very much, our customers want different formats, different things. And we've kind of grown up as this culture of just reacting to our customers because we don't have standards. And what we found historically is working with customers to look at specifically, why is that customer asking for that? What is the value by which the data in that particular format is? And what we started to find as commonalities around particular type of customers in particular regions. And so from that, we were able to help our customers create more standardized templates, so that when they went to the next customer, it wasn't just, tell me exactly how you want it, or reacting to the customer's kind of demands, but they were able to start positioning, here's 5 different formats that we use. Is there any particular one that you want? So it's not just about creating standard internally, but also how do we improve that working relationship with our customers and start driving standardization amongst our customers, which helps everybody out in that value chain.
So the next, we say cleanse pricing data. It's really cleansing your pricing data and a lot of other master data as well. I hate to use the term master data, but and this is something that you guys could go off and start after this call, Monday. But pricing data, and specifically crew names, locations, levels, that kind of thing. What we find is that without pricing data, and a lot of field ticketing systems out there for some reason don't work in disconnected mode, right? A lot of people have went down the path thinking that, AT&T, Verizon, and others would, provide coverage in these fields. And so, having a pure cloud-based field ticketing system would allow, you to capture all the information that you need in the field. But key is you really need to be able to work in disconnected mode as well. And because, you just don't have the coverage yet. But the bottom line is that if you can cleanse your pricing data, your crew information, locations, stuff like that, get that stuff straightened out so that when you do move forward with a field ticketing system that will run in disconnected mode, you can download those things, and it allows you to kind of control pricing. I mean, I think you'll take a look at this example, and we've all seen it, where exactly the same service, in this case, tank rental and inspection and the like, where it's exactly the same service, and you have three hugely different costs. Now, understand that, for competitive reasons, you might have a little bit of difference, and for landed costs, you're going to have a little bit of difference. But, as customers become more and more sophisticated, and they're pushing you through their supplier portal experience, they expect consistent pricing, with small deviations, not huge deviations, but small deviations by field. And so if you can start getting your pricing under control, that'll be huge. Now there is a little bit of resistance. We've run into a lot of issues, especially in Midland, where, I don't want my pricing to be available to the crew chief because they'll just take it when they leave for another $1 an hour. They're going to take that pricing over the competition. Don't kid yourself. Everybody knows what everybody charges. I mean, so the bottom line is, go ahead and clean it up, get it ready, because from a technology perspective, it's just going to put you in a much, much better place once you do start implementing your field ticketing. And then the last thing is, in a platform environment, it's not just about field ticketing, but it's also about contracts and different contracts that you have with your customers. You can be very, very consistent this way with your contracts. and that reduces the chances that they're going to reject your invoice, and it just allows you to get paid a little faster.
It's a great slide there. Great topic.
Okay,
Bill.
Next one. So develop a support model. Now, Trenegy as a whole, we don't really like creating organizations to create organizations' sake. We're really all about efficiency, and we know you make money by generating revenue, not creating back office overhead. But what we're saying here is create a loose group or a semi-formal group of people that will allow folks in the field, especially when the new ticketing system goes live, they know exactly where to go when they have questions. This is also pretty critical as you look forward. Given the turnover that you have in the field, this group can also kind of provide on-the-job training, if you will. We have clients, if they're running in the Office 365 environment, what they do is they have these people peppered all over the company. Typically, these are back office folks. Sometimes they're managers. Sometimes they're the field admin folks, the admin folks in the field offices and stuff like that. But what will happen is, you can use things like we have clients who use Yammer and Teams to go out and, pop in questions, and the questions are pretty much routed to the right people. If you don't have, Office 365, so you don't have access to Yammer and Teams, we see folks using Slack or products like Evan 360, so these are also platforms that allow you to connect, to the right people. But again, Office, I don't know why people wouldn't go with Office 365 and again, just kind of use the tools out there. But the bottom line is that people in the field will be less intimidated using this technology if they know, wow, I can push a button, or I can make a phone call, or I know exactly where to go for help. I don't just necessarily, turn to the guy in the doghouse and say, hey, you know what to do. If you have this network in place, it's actually pretty critical. The other thing it does is if you pick the right folks, it keeps the change going, right? It keeps people from reverting back to, let me just do it the old way. But this is it's not necessarily intuitive, or it's not necessarily top of mind, but getting this type of organization, matrixed organization in place is pretty critical.
Yeah, a couple points on this. One, technology has changed radically as it relates to different ways we can provide support in the connected world, using things like augmented reality. So you've got a senior person back at a main office with a junior person in the field, and they're doing kind of hands-on training or oversight as it's occurring, or as that action's occurring. In the disconnected world, you're seeing things like Microsoft came out with a guide. So it's basically when I'm within my mobile application, but I'm disconnected and I'm on my own. It's procedural elements that help guide me through the right activities and help me process that work ticket. And the other element to your point, Peter, is really what we're seeing as it relates to that kind of embedded nature across the value chain within the company. So what's interesting, we're finding, there's the tremendous fall off of senior people that have tremendous knowledge that are retiring. And so we've got to do that knowledge transfer. And particularly when you look at field ticketing, and many times they can be our, most challenging people in a implementation. But if done right, they can become our biggest champions. And when you have senior people that have been working in the field for many years, to be able to have not only that knowledge transfer, but also that endorsement from the technology side of things, you kind of get the benefit of, of both worlds. So there's multiple ways today, more than we had even 5 years ago, as it relates to optimizing the use of technology, successfully using that technology, and having a good user experience.
So the last thing is, no consulting firm would be classified a consulting firm if we didn't talk about communication. And actually, I also noticed the title is 3 Secrets of a Successful Field Ticketing System. So I guess this is the second of a freebie, right? Extra 2 that we give you. But the bottom line is that keeping communications open, everything that we've talked to up until now, from whether it's the process journey maps, piloting, pricing, setting up support, it's all about making sure that critical folks are not left in the dark and people really understand, what are the driving motivators for us to implement a field ticketing system? Why do we need to be consistent? Why is it important to our customers? Yes, it is possibly going to create more work for me, but in the end, it's good for the company. It's good for me. It's good for my team. It's good for my crew. So communication is just critical. And, we really can't stress that enough. And again, the technology that Matt was just referring to, leveraging that technology to keep communications fresh, using platforms, Teams, Yammer, Slack, Evan 360, whatever, right? Emails typically go ignored, but all these other technologies are out there to make sure that communication is put forth. But what's really critical is it has to be truthful, it has to be clear, and very, very timely. Matt, anything you want to?
Yeah, an interesting thing we did one time. I think it just shows you how disruptive technology can be. We had a company come to us one time, a CEO had said, "Hey, going back to the tribe concept, I've got all these different foremen or field managers that all think that their process is better. They won't collaborate. Our customers want us to collaborate. We're doing more national type business, and so we've got to collaborate. And customers hate what we're doing very differently in one market versus another." And so we said, "Hey, fire up a social, Yammer internal, and just no rules, and just see what happens, and you'll find out exactly where your tribes are, and you'll see collaboration that you didn't realize is already going on." And sure enough, within 30 days, he reached back out to me and said, "It's unbelievable what intelligence has provided us." So I think sometimes we need to kind of step outside of our silos and realize that there's probably a lot more going on and more likeness amongst that our community, or these tribes as we call them, than we think. And technology can be an enabler as it relates to using kind of low value technology such as a corporate social network to create learnings, and also to start creating connectivity amongst the organization to change that culture way of thinking to be more collaborative in the future. So we wanted to kind of leave you with really kind of a couple thoughts here. One, being that our whole series has been really talking about digital transformation and how it's impacting oil and gas field services. And when you think about field ticketing systems and processes and so on, it's not just a field ticketing system in today's world that is going to just, solve all our problems when you go back to that first slide and we talked about. And so as a result, when we look at as an organization, we look at where companies are kind of going with technology, it's much more in this platform kind of framework or platform thinking. So it's sometimes overwhelming. It's difficult when you look at, is it going out and buying a field ticketing system going to solve a problem? Is it ERP? Is it EDI capability to connect with our customers? Kind of where is the value prop, or maybe it's intelligence. And so we've come up with a framework to help companies really identify kind of where they're at in their digital journey, put priorities around key elements of oil and gas service businesses, whether it be looking at the employee side and how we improve that experience, which directly impacts our customers, or whether we start with the customer experience, or whether we start with the partner ecosystem, really looking at ultimately how do we get to a connected ecosystem and create better unified way of delivering services. So our last thought is really, when you look at field ticketing or investing in technology, to what Peter talked about earlier, it's really a combination of looking at not just technology is the silver bullet, but a combination of where are we as an organization, where do we want to get to, how well defined and mature are our processes, our communications, our communities, and then ultimately, what does that roadmap need to look like? And it's a journey over time. I would leave you with the thought that, I think where we see companies make the biggest mistake is there's a huge appetite to embrace some of the modern technologies, and they take on too much too fast in a ad hoc type of strategy, versus tying the strategy to very disciplined type of business strategic elements, and also ensuring that we've got alignment as it relates to the maturity of the organization, so that it all comes together into a bringing automation in on top of, going back to Peter's point on the forms, starting with standardizing forms, then bringing the technology in, to the cultural impact, which is, just because we bring in great technology doesn't mean we have people that are well trained and have the ability and or understanding of how to embrace it and really drive value through it. Peter, anything else you want to add?
No, man, that was a perfect wrap.
Okay, Bill, I think we'll open up for question at this point in time.
Okay, great. We've got a couple. Let me read the first one here from Nick. Nick said, you both brought up some challenges around changing organizations' processes. Can you share both a good and bad example around helping an organization change or improve their processes?
So the good would be if you went through the process that kind of Matt and I talked about. I mean, this is kind of a tried and true method. You go through this way, going through the pilot, making sure the process maps clearly show that things are not different, all the way through to communications. That works well. And we've done that with everybody from a fracking company to water transfer to a fairly significant oilfield services company that provides a wide variety of services. While the bad is one of the worst situations I've seen. I can't use technology or company names, but company just went out, fairly sizable company just went out, started implementing technology and saying that from a field service perspective, we're going to implement this particular tool and everybody's going to use it and it's going to drive the change. And by leading with technology like that, it didn't work so well. And we've seen that a lot. That's kind of why we suggest to our clients to make sure you spend the right amount of time with process and ticketing up front.
Mine's kind of a good and a bad. I think it's a single topic that has two sides of the blade, and that is the biggest miss that we see in process and change management is that everybody that's involved in that value chain understands the impact that they have in their actions. Meaning that whether it's our field crew or it's the CFO of the company, many times when we look at these initiatives, we end up holding a lot of that strategy, purpose, and understanding of what we expect that impact to be at a much more senior level. And the more that we can push that down across the organization so that I understand, you're not just asking me to do this because you want, more oversight on me and, it's big brother, but it's really breaking it down to the individual level for them to understand the value, both negative and positive, that they have on the organization and how they can positively impact a process and or a change in culture and or a rollout of technology. And in many cases, doesn't matter size of company, this single point gets lost and very early on in the process. And so as a result, you end up getting disengagement, you end up getting non-compliance, and you end up getting, even turnover and disgruntled employees.
And hey, I'm not an oil and gas expert, but just to throw a really simple example in here. I'm a marketing guy. I work with a lot of companies on rebuilding their websites, and just about every company, when they want to rebuild a website, they say, let's get it done fast. We need it up soon. Let's go fast. And so we don't want to spend a lot of time prior to that getting all of our ducks in a row. We'll do it during the project. And that always causes a problem because there's an expectation of companies that a website rollout should happen in, let's say, 2 or 3 months. But when you save the processes, when you save those conversations for during the project, all of a sudden now your website project turns into 6 months or 9 months, and it gets seen as a failure. I've had it where we go to do the leadership page, and that kicks off a 45-day discussion with the executive team about, okay, who do we want to list on the website? What's their role? What's going on? Those processes and those decisions should be made, in a very formal process before you start the deployment. And then the deployment can be done kind of around the same expectations you might have had going into it. So just wanted to throw
you
that
bring
in.
up a good point, and I'll tell you how it impacts us on the delivery side. Many companies are wanting to move towards more of an agile type of deployment model, to the point the industry's moving fast. We've got a short-term opportunity, and we do agile implementations often. The challenge is when it comes to the client side is really having strong governance. And usually where you have a breakdown, if you want to, bring technology or process improvement to market fast, is there's not proper governance in place. So as a result, very quickly, what turns into from a very agile type of deployment process gets into a very basically a stalled out project because of the fact that either decisions can't be made because you haven't kind of created that alignment on the standardization, and or the business, because it doesn't have proper governance, can't keep up with that type of deployment cycle. And so you end up in this kind of bumpy kind of road. But if an organization has very good governance in place and good discipline around that governance, then compressed deployments, agile type of implementations can work.
Awesome. So James has a question. James said, hey, a lot of this presentation is based around companies going from a manual process to a digital process. We've had a ticketing system in place for several years. We want to do better. How does it change for us?
Actually, so what you do is you still, okay, let me back up. So we've helped a number of companies transition from one field ticketing system to another, or improving a field ticketing system. When you're improving an existing field ticketing system, the process maps still make sense. I would hazard a guess that if you have a field ticketing system out there and you've been using it for years, you do have a variety of non-standard ticketing, tickets across the same service line. So going back and tweaking those. But really, trying to do better is finding out from your customers what's missing so you can enhance the system for that. And then Matt brought up analytics. I mean, we have helped companies revamp their ticketing system, and sometimes it's minor changes but make major differences to allow people to do things like do P&L by crew, P&L by asset, P&L by, whatever. And, typically the original field ticketing systems will only track services, but not crew, travel time, downtime, where a crew member could have 2 or 3 different responsibilities that require 2 or 3 different pay on their part. So those are the areas that we see are typically improved if you already have an existing field ticketing system. The last part is a few folks have field ticketing systems that are not fully integrated into their ERP, and that would be the last thing to look at, is to make sure that integration is tight and frankly, the integration is tight all the way through the platform to your customers, so that when you're sending the bill, the tickets are properly attached and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, many times there's nothing that the field ticketing system is doing wrong. It's all the ancillary elements, outside that field ticketing motion. Analytics is probably the biggest area that we see as area for improvement and modernization. And also the other element is sometimes when we look at the type of work that we're doing in the field, does it make sense to move or to add to that field ticketing system more of a generic kind of Canvas app type of application where you could just use it for inspections and very simple type of work activities.
Okay. Kristen has a question. We don't use a Microsoft accounting and back office system. Would we still be able to implement a Microsoft ticketing system?
Absolutely. If you look at the whole entire Microsoft kind of business applications strategy today, it's really a unique application strategy because you can implement it as a single end-to-end solution, or you can consume it as a best-of-breed solution. So if you just wanted to consume the field ticketing solution and integrate that to other ERP applications, that's totally fine. And I would say probably half the market out there does that.
Okay. Anything else on that one, guys? I got one more question.
Okay. What's the question?
Jeff says, is this a system for small companies or big companies or mid-sized companies?
So on the Microsoft side of things, if you look at the field ticketing system, it's for mid-level to enterprise type customers. So in the case that if you've got usually around 200 field personnel that you're looking to automate, is usually where we see the value to the organization. When you look at it from a the more kind of lines of business and different service tasks that you're providing because of the flexibility and dynamic of the tool, it provides a lot of different avenues in both the mid-tier and enterprise market. I think from Peter's perspective, as it relates to the process optimization that they do, Peter, I'm not sure it matters whether you're a startup or you're an enterprise, but I don't want to speak for you.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter as long as you have, the process that we're talking about. Whether you're a 5-person shop or a 50,000 person shop, doesn't matter. You've got to get your arms around this stuff.
Great. Guys, that's all the questions we have today. Unless you want to throw some other commentary in, we'll start the closing.
We're good.
Okay. If everybody, I just wanted to share a screen really quickly here. I want to thank everyone for joining today's event, but I wanted to make sure you understood that this was the fourth in a series of 6 events. If you notice up here at the top, it's soprisystems.com. You can actually just type ONG at the end of that website, and it will take you to this page. These are the first 3 events in the series: Digital Transformation in Oil and Gas Services, Essentials for Successful ERP, which is similar to today's event, an event that we really show the ERP system. And you can see these all say watch now. They're on demand because they've been recorded and reposted live. Today's event will get recorded and reposted, so you'll be able to come back to this site at any point and watch this event over. And you might want to come to this page and register for the 2 upcoming events as well. So again, thank you to everybody who joined. Matt, thank you for hosting the event. Peter, thank you for hosting the event. And that will conclude the 5 tips for field ticketing implementation success webcast.